This is In The Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. I love experimental cuisine, but if anybody tries to push these little cicada snacks on me, I'm gonna get real ignorant. Rant over. Here's what we got for y'all. Tonight, an inside look at Pfizer's vaccine trial for younger kids and what's different about these doses. Then, police departments across the country are struggling with staffing. We dig into the factors driving the shortages. But first, here's what you need to know right now. The Delta variant is on the rise in the US, and health officials say the best defense is getting fully vaccinated. Emphasis on the fully. According to the National Institutes of Health, just one dose of the Pfizer vaccine showed 33% effectiveness against the Delta variant 3 weeks after administration. When given 2 doses of Pfizer's vaccine, the efficacy nearly tripled. We already know the Delta variant is more transmissible than the original COVID-19 strain, but evidence points to it being more deadly as well. It also seems to be spreading more among younger folks. Right now, the Delta variant accounts for 6% of new cases in the US. Across the pond, it's become the dominant strain for the UK, which could be a sign for what's to come here.
You don't want to give it the opportunity to take over as the dominant variant. And we have within our power to do that by getting people vaccinated.
At this point, about 43% of the US population is fully vaccinated. But reaching some of the holdouts is proving difficult. The US is administering about 1 million vaccine doses a day, but that rate continues to drop despite campaigns and incentives across the country. President Biden is now looking for a new way to pass his $2.3 trillion infrastructure plan after ending negotiations with some Senate Republicans. And he didn't waste much time in pitching it elsewhere. On the same day he ended talks with Senator Shelley Moore Capito, a lead Republican negotiator, Biden also chopped it up with another bipartisan group of lawmakers who are working on an alternative plan. We'll get to that in a second. To recap, Biden and Capito were working for weeks to reach an agreement on how much money to put into the country's roads, water systems, electrical grid, etc. Biden reportedly lowered his offer to $1 trillion in new spending, while Capito's offer was $330 billion in new spending. By my math, that's about a $670 billion gap. Not only that, but Republicans have disagreed with the president's proposal on how to finance that infrastructure package. So, what's next? The bipartisan talks we mentioned earlier focus on a more narrow package than the one Biden has already proposed. The president wants to raise corporate taxes to finance the proposal, which ain't gonna fly with Republicans.
Taxes would be a huge mistake.
Are you open to raising taxes?
We're not raising taxes, no.
Senate Democrats have also talked about breaking up the infrastructure package into 2.
It may well be that part of the bill that'll pass will be bipartisan and part of it will be through reconciliation, but we're not going to sacrifice the bigness and boldness in this bill.
The cicadas are wildin', and for some of us, they're acting more like gadflies. Even President Biden was caught swatting one off his neck today. I would have been a bit less chill. Overnight, his press plane was delayed for takeoff because cicadas straight up swarmed it in DC. In Cincinnati, police say a cicada caused a car crash when one flew through a window and hit a driver in the face, which is just flagrant. There are billions of these bugs flying around right now. One swarm of cicadas was so big it showed up on a weather radar. And even when you dodge them, that sound lets you know they're still here. In large groups, that sound can reach as high as 100 decibels, which is equivalent to a motorcycle or a lawnmower. The good news, the lifespan of cicadas above ground is only about 6 weeks, so there is an end in sight. The bad news, most places dealing with the insect will hit their peak this week and next. If you are adventurous enough, I do hear they make a tasty snack, but the FDA says if you're allergic to seafood, do not eat cicadas. They share a family relation to shrimp and lobsters. Who knew? Vaccine trials have been ongoing during this pandemic, and they haven't included very young children until now. Kids as young as 5 years old are now in US vaccine trials in 26 states and DC. Newsy's Lauren Magarino tells us what role young children will play in stopping COVID-19.
For most kids, getting vaccinated is nothing new.
Done! So brave! Done!
For kids like Russell Bright, the shots they're getting now are.
I'm trying to do all this stuff so I can see my friends more.
The 7-year-old and his 5-year-old brother, Tucker, are two of the more than 100 American kids participating in Pfizer's global COVID vaccine trial.
Nailed it.
When the opportunity presented itself, we wanted to get our kids enrolled in the study to, help make sure it's safe for other kids, and as well as potentially have them vaccinated as quick as possible as well.
The trial includes children from 6 months to 11 years in phases.
So the one that we started right now is 5 to 11, then we'll do 2 to 4, and then we'll do the 6 months to 2 years of age.
Like other COVID-19 vaccine trials, these kids get their blood drawn, a nasal swab test, the vaccine, and a diary to log any reaction or lack thereof. The only difference, these younger children will get lower doses than older ones or adults. Less than 10% of confirmed COVID cases were in children, but the CDC says vaccinating them is vital.
And it not only helps him, but the entire community, anyone vulnerable around our family. So that's a great lesson to impart to our children.
If trial results prove they're safe and effective, Pfizer is expected to request federal authorization in the fall for children as young as 5. Moderna and Johnson & Johnson are also testing their shots in children. Laura Magarino, Newsy, Chicago.
U.S. police are retiring at a high rate, and many of those positions are going unfilled. All across the country, police are retiring in record numbers, sometimes without getting their pensions, and departments are struggling to bring in new recruits. Newsy's Jamal Andrews spoke to officers across the country to get a sense of how departments got here and how dire their staffing situation really is.
I got on in June of 1992, so I'm almost at 29 years at the end of the month. I personally have never seen morale being this low on the department.
Jim Calvino is the president of the Chicago Police Sergeants Union, and he says that low morale is helping to push a surge of retirements and recruitment troubles for Chicago PD.
When I first got on, we mark our seniority basically on our left sleeve of our outer garments. A star means 20 years. When I first got on, I'd see guys with a star, a bar, a second bar, sometimes even 2 stars. Now, guys are getting on and they're leaving. They're leaving. They just can't deal with it any longer.
According to the Chicago Sun-Times, 560 officers retired in 2020 as part of a 15% rise in retirements. That follows a 30% increase in retirements in 2019.
We now are about 100 sergeants short on the street. Supervisors need to be at a 10-to-1 ratio, 1 sergeant, 10 officers, by the end of 2021. I'm getting sheets back from sergeants on the street. They're supervising 20, 25 officers. There's no way you can, in good faith, say I am able to supervise that many people.
And Chicago isn't alone. There are documented staffing shortages in New York, Baltimore, and Minneapolis. The Philadelphia PD has more than 260 vacancies, and the number of planned retirements for the department is about 6 times higher this year than last year. The Fraternal Order of Police president in Philadelphia told Newsy, "We're approaching a crisis with staffing levels. It's the perfect storm of several hundred officers retiring or leaving their job in the city for higher pay and less crime out in the suburbs." Part of that perfect storm is COVID. More active duty officers died of COVID in 2020 than all other causes combined, including car crashes, heart attacks, and being shot to death.
The department wasn't prepared with equipment for us. And that really showed the officers, well, who's got our back? You know, we're out there protecting, but who's going to protect us?
Police unions and officers also point to some police reform measures that they believe make it harder to recruit. In Philadelphia, there's a new residency requirement that says potential officers must live in the city for a year before they can enter the academy, with the intention of building a more diverse department and hiring officers that are better acquainted with the community they serve. But the FOP president told Newsy the law is impractical because potential hires are not guaranteed a job or a slot in the academy.
It's now the law of Colorado.
In Colorado, a long list of statewide police reforms includes a ban on qualified immunity that shields cops from lawsuits. And while many departments in the state have not suffered a mass exodus of officers, one county sheriff said, quote, risks of civil litigation were among the top concerns during exit interviews.
If there's a failure to retain bad officers or recruit officers who don't want accountability, good riddance.
Mari Newman is a civil rights attorney representing the family of Elijah McClain. McClain was killed by the Aurora Police Department in 2019.
If there are officers who don't want to continue to work in law enforcement because they'll be accountable for their actions, those are not officers we need.
The Chicago Police Department has been under a consent decree since 2019 to reform the department. For Sergeant Calvino, he says he welcomes reform and officers who want to do the job the way it should be done.
I got a call the other day from somebody in Philadelphia telling us we should go on strike. And I almost threw the phone across the room. How dare someone say that? Who's going to protect that person down the street? It could be your mother, my mother, your father, my father, anybody. Who's going to protect them? That's my job. That's what I signed up for. And I took an oath to do that. And I would tell the protective officers out there that, it's a noble job. You go through life helping others that can't help themselves.
Jamal Andrus, Newsy, Chicago.
The car market is so hot right now, it's causing some cars to do a thing that doesn't usually happen when they're driven off the lot. The car market is kind of booming right now, and some used cars are even appreciating in value. Experts predict it'll stay this way through the end of the year as the industry combats high demand and supply chain problems. National reporter Stephanie Stone has more.
We have never seen prices this high before on used car retail prices.
Emily Voss is Director of Public Relations for Carfax.
A lot of us think of the Carfax history report when we think of Carfax, where you can get information on pretty much any vehicle and its history, whether it has an accident or service maintenance issues.
Which means they have a lot of data, more than 25 billion records to be exact. And all that information is pointing towards some historic trends.
We are seeing a severe lack of used car inventory nationwide right now. This is going on all around the country, and we see increased consumer demand. So consumer demand is at incredibly high levels, and we're seeing a short supply.
Overall prices, she says, are up about 25% from last year, and trucks up 44%. Even trade-ins are up by about 20%. It's a catch-22 if you're looking at buying or selling.
You will make a lot of money if you're selling, but you're going to be spending that money if you have to go buy another vehicle at the same time.
Is what we're seeing in the auto industry similar to what we're seeing in the housing industry, where there's low inventory, which then means high prices?
Yeah, it's all supply and demand. So, interestingly, we see certain companies like Toyota now that only has 8 days supply. We've never seen this in our history.
That's Carla Balo, President and CEO of the Center for Automotive Research, a nonprofit that supports the automotive industry through research. She's talking about the new car supply, which then in turn affects the used car supply.
It's all about electrification. And now, as a result, some of the supply chain issues that are starting to arise.
So, what does the future look like? No one has a crystal ball, but experts say give it time.
What I'm telling everybody to do is, yes, wait. If it's not, if your car is still drivable, wait.
However, if you find yourself stuck and in need, know that, like housing, it's a competitive market.
Don't let the pressure get to you and make you skip steps. You should still do your due diligence.
Which means if you're after a used car, do those inspections, check the history, and do a test drive to avoid a surprise down the road. I'm Stephanie Stone, reporting.
If you've been to a grocery store lately, you may have noticed wildly different prices for items like eggs. Something called regenerative farming is behind some of those higher prices, and some people are more than happy to pay those prices because of how it impacts the climate. National reporter Dan Grossman explains.
Throughout history, farming and land have been inextricably connected. Obvious, yes, but a relationship that is perhaps closer now than it ever has been before.
healthy soil, it improves the water cycle, the plants that grow in the soil.
Alicia Prim is a project manager at NestFresh, an egg company focused on helping the land it was founded on as much as the consumer it exists to serve.
Consumers were starting to get, more interested on where their food was coming from. So we saw that as an opportunity to partner with smaller farms throughout the country.
Jason Ureno works alongside Alicia, and together they focus on regenerative farming. The idea is to use land, but give back to it as a way to preserve it and our environment. Today, agriculture makes up a quarter of human greenhouse gas emissions. That leads to climate change, which leads to more extreme weather, which can lead to unpredictable crop outcomes. Regenerative farming is focused on reversing that cycle by increasing soil health and sequestering carbon from the atmosphere.
We're going to be using the manure from the chickens onto the land to kind of recycle some of that, the carbon emissions from the environment and pull them down into the soil.
That reversal makes the soil richer, the atmosphere pure, and the crops healthier. At NestFresh, it means using the chicken's waste to feed its growth. Chickens are given far more land to roam, about 4 times what's considered normal. They also aren't given feed that uses pesticides, herbicides, or GMOs. The result is a product that costs $8 to $9 per dozen eggs, but the NestFresh team has found people are willing to pay it.
If our jumping in convinces somebody else to do the same thing, that's just a bonus.
Right now, niche egg companies make up around 1/3 of the market, but that number is expected to hit 2/3 in the next 5 years, according to Bloomberg. Showing that connection between farming and land is only getting tighter and more respective of one another. I'm Dan Grossman.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to give us a shout on Twitter using the hashtag Newsy in the Loop. If you want to get more personal, just message me directly. Of course, if you do that, we're friends, and then I get to ask for favors. We've watched QAnon disrupt political life. This story shows another side, how the QAnon conspiracy theory has entered private lives. Our partners at Coda's Story spoke to husbands, wives, and partners about what it's like to watch a loved one turn to Q. Together, we produced a 3-part series to bring these perspectives to you. Each person is anonymous, and they share their own story about losing a partner to the conspiracy theory. Here's part 1.
One thing that's very strange about being a QAnon spouse or in a QAnon family is that you literally feel like you are watching a person who you used to know die in front of you, because whoever they used to be, whatever personality they used to have, it doesn't exist anymore. And you keep searching for that person who you've known for a really, really long time. And eventually you just find that they aren't there. And it really felt like he died. For some reason, my spouse started to become obsessed with secret societies. He started getting really into WikiLeaks, the DNC conspiracy theory, the Pizzagate conspiracy theory. That's when his personality started to change. My real red flag moment definitely revolved around his increasing anti-Semitism, which apparently is a very common thing in people who are QAnon conspiracy theorists. My dad's side of the family is Jewish, so it was difficult for me. There's nothing wrong with my family. There's nothing wrong with people being Jewish. I was hanging out with my son, and all of a sudden my son said something about Jews. And I was like, excuse me? Where did you hear this? And my 4-year-old son said, from Dad, in the car. I ran out to my car in my pajamas. I grabbed the SD card from the dash cam and I threw it into my computer and I started watching. And the first video I pulled up was disgusting. He was listening to anti-Semitic podcasts with my babies in the car. I've left my marriage now and I've been out for almost 2 months. It's really emotional to talk about because it's like your whole life ended. Like you had a real, actual life together, and they chose the internet over you. I keep thinking to myself, if social media hadn't existed, that we would have lived the rest of our lives so happily. If someone had told me 5 years ago that I would be getting a divorce because my husband believes in conspiracy theories and hates Jews, I never would have believed that. I did feel like I had lost my spouse to an addiction, and it really felt like he died.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more In The Loop. Same time, same place. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.